Zhang Henshui's Golden Age Chapter 3. Sending an envoy to meet the neighbor with clever words and good persuasion. Tanjiuxian's old house asks for a high price at this time. Zizhen had already walked far away, and Miss Wu also walked away quickly. Yanxi followed her all the way from the corridor. She said, "I really have something to say to you." While speaking, she looked forward and saw that Zizhen had turned around the corridor. So she said, "Did you see my note?" Miss Wu smiled and said, "What note? I didn't see it." Yanxi said, "Don't play dumb. If you didn't see the note, what did you do?" Miss Wu said, "I introduced Miss Kia to borrow books from you." Yanxi said, "How did she know that I have movie magazines?" Miss Wu smiled and said, "Then how should I know?" After saying that, she raised her two snow-white arms, clenched her fists, supported her left face, and laughed. Seeing her like this, Yanxi smiled and said, "Come sit with me. I have something to tell you." Miss Wu gently pushed Yanxi's hand and said, "I'll tell Miss Bai that you like to make a girlfriend." Yanxi grabbed her hands and said, "She can't interfere with me when it comes to making friends." Miss Wu took both of her hands into her arms and turned to leave. She didn't walk along the corridor, but stepped over the small railing and hid behind a bunch of flower stands. There was a big electric light on the flower stand. She put 3 fingers of her right hand on her lips, then turned her palm over and threw it to Yanxi, then turned and ran into the inner courtyard. Yanxi held the wooden pillar on the corridor with one hand and put the other hand in his trouser pocket, staring blankly at the inner courtyard. Suddenly, someone shouted from behind, "Seventh brother, what are you doing standing here alone?" When Yanxi looked back, it was his eldest brother Jin Fengju. So he said, "I feel dizzy sitting in the house. Come out and breathe some fresh air." Fengju said, "You are lying. If you want to breathe fresh air, there is a big yard in front of your house, which is much more spacious than here. Why do you come here?" "I just saw a woman's shadow flash, and there was a sound of leather shoes. Isn't someone here to talk to you?" Yanxi said, "You obviously saw it. Why are you asking me?" Fengju said, "To be honest, I advise you not to associate with the 2 people from the Wu family. Their nicknames are not very nice." Yanxi said, "I have never heard of her nickname." Fengju said, "I don't have to tell you. If I tell you, you will definitely say that I am spreading a rumor." Yanxi said, "She is not related to me. Why should I do that for her? Just tell me, what's her nickname?" Fengju said, "Don't you know anything at all?" Yanxi said, "Of course I don't know anything. If I wanted to know, why would I ask you?" Fengju smiled and said, "Her nickname is really indecent. Call her." Yanxi said, "What's her name?" Fengju said, "Oh, it's really not nice to say. Her name is Salty Water Sister." After hearing this, Yanxi felt as if he had suffered some kind of loss. He said, "What you said is a bit unreliable. I dare not believe it." Fengju said, "I know I've said it, but you don't believe it? That's no wonder. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. In fact, if you carefully investigate Masua's family background, you will know the origin of this statement. Think about it. Her father only has that small job, and the monthly car expenses given by the 2 sisters only take up most of it. Can it allow the 2 sisters to run around in the social circle day and night and squander like this? By analogy, we can think that the money they use definitely does not come from their own family. Since the money does not come from their own family, there is no need to say what follows. I see that you and her do not have a very strong relationship, so just tell me honestly. Otherwise, I won't say it." Although Yanxi did not agree with what he said, the reasons he cited were very sufficient. She said, "Everyone has their own secrets. How can others know them? Besides, if what she said is true, today's dinner party is hosted by your sister-in-law. Why didn't you stop her and let her pay?" Fengju said, "I didn't know it beforehand, but even if I knew, I wouldn't stop her, because she has treated your sister-in-law several times. I suggest that you return the gift quickly and have less contact in the future. So I always say, it's okay to go to the theater and play cards with a few acquaintances, but once you are involved in the vortex of socializing, spending money is a small matter, and you can't bear it day and night." From what I heard, these social stars, if they don't use the method of the Wu sisters, they will suffer losses. A few days ago, the eldest daughter of the He family secretly took some beads and asked you to sell it with her. Yanxi said, "It's not that I don't believe it, because I still saw her in the west of the restaurant hall." He lowered his head and went back to the back. But to be a lifelong partner and manage household affairs, it is better to be simple. If I marry that girl, I think her love must be pure, and she is also very gentle. She is definitely not like the girls in the social scene. Not only can you not interfere with her actions, but she will also interfere with your actions. In terms of appearance, that kind of natural beauty is better than the people who jump out of the pile of cosmetics in the social scene. Okay, let's do it. After making up his mind, he rang the bell and called Jin Rong in. Yanxi said, I want you to make a small fortune. Can you do it? Jin Rong said with a smile, is there anything you wouldn't do to make a fortune? Yanxi said, yes, I know you can do it. I'm asking if you can do it? Jin Rong said, I dare not promise you anything. I have to ask for your advice first. Yanxi said, I want the house at No 12 in Quanzi Hutong. You go find the boatman and buy it for me. Jin Rong said, Seventh Master, are you joking? What do you want to buy that house for? Yanxi said, I'm not kidding you. Just buy it from me. How much do you think the house will cost? Jin Rong said, I don't know whether the house faces east or west, or whether it is big or small. How can I know how much it will cost? Yanxi also felt that the question was rash, so he smiled and said, I seem to remember telling you so. All right, you go and take a look tomorrow morning, and then, you are the one who replied to my letter. Jin Rong laughed and said, Seventh Master, who did you hear that the house was for sale? Yanxi said, I didn't hear anyone say that. Jin Rong said, then, you saw the advertisement in the newspaper saying it was for sale, right? Yanxi said, no. Jin Rong said, it's not this, it's not that. How do you know that the house is for sale? Yanxi said, I don't know, I just want to buy it. Jin Rong said, my lord, how can you take things in the world so easily? This is not some small thing in a store. We can buy whatever we want. They don't have any intention of selling it. How can I ask them the price? Yanxi said, I see that the house is empty. It's not for sale, but it's for rent. You can go and ask. It's definitely right. Jin Rong lowered his head and thought about it. Why did he buy a property? Isn't this a joke? Oh, that's right. It's very close to Luo Huahutong. It's probably to become neighbors with that person. Then he smiled and said, I guessed what you were thinking. You want to buy a house there to prepare for the wedding. But there is still an alley between there and Luo Huahutong. Yanxi smiled and said, don't worry about it. Just do it for me. Jin Rong stepped closer and asked with a smile, of course you bought it privately, so you have to keep it a secret. But have you prepared the cash? Yanxi said, I have a way to deal with my affairs, so you don't have to worry about it. I asked you to buy a house, so just go buy a house, and don't worry about anything else. Jin Rong didn't dare to say anything more, so as not to find a nail, so he agreed and went out. The next day, Jin Rong went to number 12 Quanzi Hudong to look at the house according to Yanxi's words. When he arrived at the door, he saw that the two doors were closed and there was no rental notice. He looked inside through the crack of the door. It was empty and there was no one. He listened quietly for a while, but there was no sound. It seemed like an empty house. He hesitated for a while, not knowing what to do, thinking that since the door was closed from the inside, there must be someone inside. I might as well call out and try. So I knocked on the door a few times. Then I heard a cough from inside the door, and then continued, from far away to near, with footsteps. When he reached the door, the bolt peeled off with a sound, and another door slowly opened. When Jin Rong looked, a head stretched out, with a wax-like face covered with snot and tears, and an old voice came out from his shaggy beard, asking, who are you looking for? Jin Rong smiled and apologized. I'm here to see the house. The old man said, I don't rent this house. After saying that, he looked inside and shrank his head. Jin Rong was afraid that he would close the door, so he quickly put his foot inside and went in. He said, isn't your house vacant? Why don't you rent it out? The old man said if they don't want to rent it out, then they don't want to rent it out. Why do you keep asking? Jin Rong saw that he was a stubborn old man and couldn't force himself on him. He took out 2 cigarettes from his pocket, handed one to the old man, and said, you smoke. The old man took a cigarette and said, do you want a light? As he said that, he reached into his bag and took out a few matches. He rubbed one and lit a cigarette with Jin Rong. Jin Rong thanked him for his help and smoked the cigarette. Then the old man smoked his own cigarette. Jin Rong asked, what's your name? The old man said, My name is Lao Li, and I'm here to look at the house. Jin Rong said, I guess it is. This kind of thing can only be done by an old and honest person. Is there anyone else? Lao Li said, no one else, just me. Jin Rong said, you are very patient. You have been looking at it for a long time, right? Lao Li said, of course. I have been looking after it for more than 2 months. Jin Rong walked in while talking. When he looked at it, he saw a large courtyard, which was divided into 2 by a white wall. There was a locust tree inside and outside, and the house with a corridor was also very large. The paint was peeling off, and it was very old. Walking into this courtyard, there were corridors on both sides. In the middle, there was a rock mountain against a building in front. There were 2 small trees and a grape trellis. Turning left and right from here, there were 2 side rooms. Behind the side rooms, there were a dozen trees of different heights, all lush and green, casting a shadow on the whole courtyard. The grass on the ground was 3 or 4 feet long. If a person stood in the grass would be as tall as a person's belly. There were piles of dirt and rubble in the grass everywhere. Looking at it, it was really an abandoned courtyard. There was a faint smell of bad luck in the grass. There was no sign of prosperity in the front and back of this house. Jin Rong was very confused. Except for a few trees, there was nothing in this house that suited my 7th master's taste. Why did he want to buy it? Jin Rong took a general look at the front and back and guessed that the landlord was a wealthy family and was planning to renovate the house. Otherwise, why would he keep this dilapidated house? He asked the old man, why don't you rent out this house? The old man said, they want to build it and live in it themselves. Jin Rong asked, when will you start? The old man said, I can't say. He looked annoyed. Jin Rong felt around and took out 2 dimes, handed them to the old man, and said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'll give you this little money to go to a tea house and have a pot of water. The old man said, what are you talking about? I want you to spend money. As he said this, he rubbed his 2 skinny palms and smiled at the dimes. Jin Rong took the opportunity to stuff them into the old man's hand. The old man put away the bill and said with a smile, I was called by the prince who collects rent here. I don't know, the landlord. If you want to know what's going on here, go find the prince. He's been here a lot these days. When he comes, he stays at the big wine jar at the entrance of the alley. You can find him at the big wine jar, and you won't be wrong. Jin Rong said, how can I recognize him? The old man said, he looks easy to recognize. His face is full of bubbles, he has a big red nose, he's about 30 years old, and he speaks with a Shandong accent. There's no one else like him, the big wine jar. As he was talking, a series of tinkling gongs sounded. From the sound, it was outside the courtyard wall, probably in the alley, and the coppersmith's burden passed by. Jin Rong said, what's outside the wall? The old man said, it's Luo Huahutong. Jin Rong understood and thought, our 7th master is really thoughtful about this matter. He looked at this house from the front door to the back wall. Since he has come up with this stupid idea, he probably won't stop until he gets the house. The old man asked, you want to inquire about this matter? Do you want to rent this house? Jin Rong vaguely agreed, yes. But since the landlord wants to build a house, it can't be rented. The old man said, it doesn't matter. You can persuade the prince. Then he lowered his voice and said, we are all people who do things for others. What else do you not understand? Jin Rong smiled and nodded, and walked out of the door. The old man also said, if you come again, just knock on the door. I stay here all day and night. Jin Rong knew that it was the power of those few cents, so he smiled and agreed to go. He thought, since he came here, he might as well get things done thoroughly. So he went to the big wine jar to drink first and ask when the surname Wang would come. It was also a coincidence that within half an hour, a drunkard came in from outside. Jin Rong saw that he looked just like what the old man said. When Jin Rong saw him come in, he quickly stood up and made way for him. The man looked at Jin Rong and guessed that he was a friend of the same trade, so he nodded. Jin Rong said, is your surname Wang? The man said, yes, my name is Wang Deshing. Do you recognize me? Jin Rong said, it seems that I have met him before, but I just can't remember. After saying that, he asked Wang Deshing to sit down and asked for a pot of liquor for him. Wang Deshing was happy to see someone asking him to drink, thinking that Jin Rong was sincere in making friends. He just gave way for a while, and then he was at ease. Jin Rong said, I want to ask you something. Is the house at No. 12 Quanzi Hudong yours? Wang Desheng said, yes. Jin Rong said, it's empty now. Why don't you rent it out? Wang Desheng said, the landlord wants to build a new one. Jin Rong said, I know that too, but the house has been empty for a long time. When will it be rented out? Anyway, you can make money by renting it out whether it is completed or not. If someone wants to rent it out now, I think it's a good idea to rent it out. Wang Desheng knew that he wanted to rent a house, so he said, that's true. But the landlord wants to rent it out after he builds a new one. He has his own plans. How can we know? Jin Rong said, my landlord has something to do in Quanzi Hutong, and there are no houses to rent here at the moment, so we have no choice. It just so happens that your house is vacant, so I really want to rent it. As for how much the rent is, we can discuss it. Wang Desheng thought about it and knew that he must have something important to do and had to rent this house. He said, my boss has plenty of houses, and he doesn't care about the rent. Jin Rong said, this is what we brothers said, so there's no need to hide it. I think the prince can be the owner of your boss. As long as you can make do, you can definitely succeed. Otherwise, this house is also in a mess. If your boss can sell it, the price is a little bit, as long as it is considered, it doesn't matter. Seeing that he was going to take a step further and buy the house, Wang Desheng was very surprised. He thought, is there a treasure in my house? Why do you want it so badly? So he put aside the house and slowly asked who Jin Rong's boss was and why he didn't hold a wedding. From beginning to end, he questioned him endlessly. Jin Rong thought that if he didn't explain it, Wang Desheng would definitely treat it as a business to make money, and he would never be able to make it. So he explained that the young master wanted to live in this house. As for the purpose of living there, it was to marry a girl from the neighborhood as a concubine. Wang Desheng drank a few glasses of wine and was a little tipsy. He smiled and asked, let me find out which family this girl is from. Jin Rong said, I don't know either. Anyway, she is not far from this house. Wang Desheng thought for a while, and said with a smile, oh, I know. She must be from the Leng family in Luohua, Hutong. She is the most beautiful girl in these two alleys. The house she lives in is also ours. No wonder your young master wants to live in this house. Since it is your Jin family who wants to buy it, you have plenty of money. As long as you are willing to pay the price, no matter what, we will do it. I persuaded my boss to sell it. Jin Rong said, then, how much do you think it will cost? Wang Desheng said, it should be more than 10,000, right? Jin Rong smiled and said, this house is useless. There is only a piece of land left. How can it be worth so much? Wang Desheng said, if it is normal, it is probably worth only 4,000 or 5,000 yuans. Now, one of you wants to buy it and the other doesn't want to sell it. How can you not pay a high price? Besides, I'm still talking in vain. I don't know what the boss means yet. Seeing that there were some clues, Jin Rong became more determined to continue. They agreed to meet here again tomorrow morning. Today, everyone will tell the boss and discuss this matter. At that time, they paid for the wine and went home to tell Yanxi everything. Yanxi was very happy and immediately asked Jin Rong to drive. He took Jin Rong in the car and went to Quanzi Hudong to see the house. Yanxi went in and took a look. He felt that the house was too old. But when he arrived at the backyard and looked at the next door, he suddenly smiled as if he remembered something. So he took Jin Rong and walked around to the back of the house in Luohua Hudong to look for a while. Sure enough, the row of trees he saw the night before was the backyard. The house was right next to the Leng family. I remember there was a boundary stone on the other side of the Leng family's door. Now, looked and saw that it was at the corner of the wall. The words on the boundary stone were exactly the same as the words on the boundary stone at the foot of the wall. On this side, the same 4 words Sanhui Hall boundary. Yanxi smiled and said to Jin Rong, didn't the man surnamed Wang say that the house where the Leng family lives is also his? This is indeed true. Tell him that I will buy it all. Jin Rong said, he wants 10,000 for a shabby house over there. Although this house is small, it is in good condition. I'm afraid it won't cost more than 3,000 or 4,000. Yanxi said, why should you? And I feel bad about spending money. Just make things good. Yanxi looked at it and was very happy. He thought to himself, just give him 10,000. Anyway, it's worth 6,000 or 7,000, so the loss is limited. Just think of it as a big bet lost. I remember that there was still 6,000 or 7,000 yuans in my savings book. I borrowed 3,000 or 4,000 yuans from various places. It was not worth much. This matter was settled. I looked over it and planned it. I was very happy. I went home and asked nothing. I went back to the bedroom to check my account, but when I took out the savings book from the small safe under the bed, I was very disappointed. There was only more than 2,000 yuans. I was very puzzled and thought, how could I spend so much money? I looked through the account from beginning to end and felt that it was about the same. At this time, there was a friction sound on the glass window. I looked up suddenly and saw a shadow of a flowery dress flashing outside the window. Yanxi asked, "Who?" Someone outside the window smiled and answered, "It's me." Yanxi smiled and said, "Zhao Lion, come in. I have something to tell you." Zhao Lion said, "I won't come in. What do you want?" Yanxi said, "I really have something to do. Come in." Zhao Lion said, "What a coincidence. I came. And you have something to do. If I don't come, who can you ask to do this?" Yanxi said, "If you don't believe me, I can't do it. I'll do it myself." Zhao Lion said, "Is it really something to do? Come in, come in. You can't eat me anyway." As she said that, she came in with a smile. Yanxi saw that she was wearing an Indian cloth gown with a white background and blue bamboo leaves, and smiled. I was shocked. I was afraid that Guanyin from the South China Sea appeared. Zhao Lion smiled and said, "This is a new dress I made. Do you think it's good?" Yanxi said, "Good. Very good. Didn't I say it looks like Guanyin Bodhisattva?" Zhao Lion said, "You are laughing at me. How can I say it's good?" Yanxi smiled and said, "Don't move. Let me take a closer look." As he said that, he stood up and tilted his head to look at Zhao Lion's body carefully. Zhao Lion said, "I know you are fine." After saying that, she turned around and was about to run. Yanxi grabbed her clothes and said, "If you really have something to do, don't run." Then he picked up the passbook thrown on the sofa and handed it to Zhao Lion, saying, "Please calculate it carefully for me. Is the account correct?" Zhao Lion said, "Why don't you calculate it yourself?" Yanxi said, "I am a careless person. I find it troublesome and too lazy to calculate a few cents. But if I don't calculate a few cents, the total will not add up. I know you are the most meticulous, so please calculate it." Zhao Lion smiled and put her left eye. She squinted her eyes for a moment, and then pursed her lips and said, "Don't drink rice soup." Yanxi said, "Strange. Where did you learn this saying of drinking rice soup?" As she said that, she held Zhao Lion's hand and said with a smile, "Why should I drink rice soup with you?" Zhao Lion waved her hand and said, "Don't make trouble. If someone sees it, what will happen? Do you want me to calculate or not? If you want me to calculate, you can sit aside and don't move. If you don't want me to calculate, I will leave." After saying that, she turned her body and faced outward, as if she wanted to leave. Yanxi rushed forward and blocked the door. She stretched out her hands and said, "Don't go. Don't go. I'll let you calculate well, and I'll sit aside and not move. Isn't that okay?" Zhao Lion said, "That's fine." Then she sat at the table and used a pen to calculate the accounts on the passbook one by one. While she was calculating, she still kept glancing at Yanxi to see if he moved. Yanxi just smiled, and as soon as he stood up, Zhao Lion threw the pen and ran away. She ran to the window and said, "I know you want to do something." Yanxi said in the room, "I asked you to settle the accounts. Why did you run away without finishing them?" Zhao Lion said, "I have already settled them. No mistake." Yanxi said, "What is the total?" Zhao Lion said, "Isn't it clearly written on the passbook? Why are you asking me?" As she spoke, she had already walked away. Yanxi said to herself, "This thing likes to tease people, and after teasing people, she wants to run away. She is so hypocritical. One day I will definitely deal with her." She looked up suddenly and saw Zhang Shun standing in front of her. She couldn't help blushing. She said, "What are you doing here?" Zhang Shun said, "Didn't the seventh master call me?" Yanxi said, "Who called you?" Zhang Shun smiled and said, "You are still pressing the bell." Yanxi looked down and saw that his hand was indeed on the doorbell. He smiled and said, "My name is Jin Rong." Zhang Shun said, "Didn't the seventh master ask him to leave?" Yanxi said, "Then forget it." Zhang Shun was confused and left. Yanxi picked up the deposit book and looked at the amount again. He thought, this amount is too different from the budget. How can I buy a house? There are only two ways now. The first way is to go to the bank to overdraw a sum, and the second way is to borrow in small amounts. However, I am afraid that the first way will fail, so I will try the second way. He has made up his mind, so he starts to try the second way. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.